Johnny Nuriel, you are known as Mr. Nude Portland and the Fire Entertainer of the Year, and recently you've been titled the award of Queen of the Roses, and as well as your partner, so Queens
Yeah.
of the Roses. You are an amazing burlesque performer. You command such a wonderful stage presence. I have so much to learn from you. Thank you for coming to the show.
Oh, I'm very honored to be here. Thank you. Yes.
So, what got you into the performing arts to start? What made Johnny Johnny?
That is a layered question. Beautiful. Well, so I have been doing burlesque for 13 years. And before that journey, I was very involved in the flow art community. I just loved doing flow arts. Got like very, very into. I'm just gonna kind of go backwards. So,
Yeah,
so,
please.
so got into hula hooping when I was a teenager, and like fell in love with hula hooping, and that became like my favorite prop. Before that, going back even farther, doing fire performance was something that like I would see fire dance and I was just completely enraptured by it. And I started teaching myself how to spin poi when I was young, like 14. Started learning how to do poi, and before that, I had done martial arts. So I had done a lot of bow staff, and the spinning from the staff is very similar to spinning poi. So I picked it up really fast, and I have like a good hand-eye coordination for it. So I picked up spinning poi very fast, and I started playing with fire poi with my sister. We like figured it out together, and that was I think I did my first bird when I was like 15 years old.
Oh wow!
And it went well, and it was just in our backyard, and we figured it out. We like got the fuel and did all the things and helped each other. That was my first fire burn, was at 15, and I'm 35 now. So it's been quite some time, and yeah, even before that, I loved theater. So when I was in middle school, I started doing plays and singing, and yeah, just kind of I would say the theater is where it all kind of began. And I had a very flamboyant spirit, and I love to perform even when I was little, like very, very young. 5 or 6, my parents would tell stories of me entertaining any guests that would come. I would do dances for them, and how kids do. So it's been like a lifetime of performance, and leading up to when I was an adult and 21, and was able to like go out to nightlife and things. I took a gig through Craigslist, of all things. I took a gig, which sounds sketchier than it was, but it was an aerial gig, and I had been training in aerial arts, and I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna go out for this gig, and I became part of this aerial troupe in town in Portland, at a bar called Sky Club, which is no longer with us, but that was my first booking in Portland, and I was 22 years old, and I worked as an aerialist. And then through that, I discovered that I like doing stage performance, like floor shows. And I started incorporating shedding of layers of my costumes. And I didn't even know that I was doing burlesque. I didn't even understand that.
Oh,
I didn't even
okay.
really understand what that was. I didn't have a formal kind of cultural education in burlesque, and I hadn't seen a lot of burlesque, but I was just kind of doing it intuitively. And from there, it just kind of expanded. And I kind of gave up aerial arts. It's very demanding, very hard on your body. I was like, I'm gonna give up. I'm gonna say goodbye to that chapter of my life. And I started devoting myself to stagecraft and burlesque, and continued to incorporate the elements of fire dance that I love to do, the elements of flow arts that I love, and I kind of and singing and acting and all of that, and I kind of just brought them all together in the platform of burlesque, because it's such an expansive art form. So that's kind of the short version of a long story of how I got to that point. Well,
Yeah, of course. That answers so many questions for me
oh,
because
good.
essentially you've been a lifelong performer. It
Yeah. Well,
shows.
thank you.
Speaks to your history of being a triple threat. You can sing, you can dance, you can act, you can do it all. That's amazing. That's really cool. You actually have a very similar origin story to me in the sense that I started with a martial arts background.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
did a lot of like stick and bow staff like manipulation when I was a kid. You know, you're young, you go into the backyard, you grab a stick, you swing it
Yes.
around. You do this for decades and you get good at it. And then that's how I got into the flow arts world. I'm like, oh, these skills transfer over perfectly. Wow, this is amazing. So that's really, really cool.
Yes.
What was it like for you when you were first stepping on stage? Because I know for some people that could be a pretty nerve wracking experience. You know, performance anxiety, being in the public eye, people looking at you. How did that balance with your natural tendencies to be a performer? Just growing up.
Yeah. The stage fright that we talk about. So there's like this the butterflies that you get in your stomach. And I
Yeah,
always tell whenever I'm working with someone that has a lot of anxiety, has a lot of stage fright, I I
yeah.
usually what I'll tell them for encouragement is that the energy that we feel when we're feeling anxious or nervous is an indication of how much it means to you and how much you care, like
Mm,
how much you care about doing well and performing to the best of your ability. And when those nerves go away, it's a good indication that you're a little tuned out, or you're kind of checked out of what you're doing. If you don't care anymore, if you're just kind of like going through the motions. And we've all been there. It's a job. So sometimes you're like, well, this is just work. I'm not nervous. I kind of just don't feel anything. I'm just going through the motions. And
yeah.
that's a place that we have to be really aware of as artists, because we don't want to be stagnant. We don't want to become complacent or stagnant. And so that energy and that nervousness, that drive is so powerful. And that's what gives you the edge on stage. But it's a fine line. So you don't want to go out onto that stage looking like you're terrified. Like you don't want to go out,
Right.
because the audience can see it in your face. Like we can see the nerves in your eyes. So you don't want to go out there feeling super nervous, but you don't want to go out there looking checked out as well. So it's definitely like a fine line. Um, but for me, I still get nervous. Like all these years later, I still get very nervous. And hi, um,
I
I
know.
still. Oh, we're
Thanks for her.
having a blessing. That's beautiful. Hello, Queen.
Absolutely. Her
Hello,
name is
Queen.
Ashes.
Yes,
Yeah.
I bow to you. So I still get nervous whenever I go out on stage, and especially if I'm singing, I get very nervous because it means a lot to me. It's the performance art that's the most personal to me, sharing my voice, and I get very nervous. And it's something in that those butterflies give you power. So I try to channel it. If you're feeling really nervous, there's so many exercises that you can do. Like it's so important that you take the time that you need before you go out onto that stage. If you're just throwing yourself out there without grounding yourself or feeling prepared or regulating your stress, your anxiety, it's going to reflect in your performance. So it's so important to ground yourself. It's so important to take a moment. If you need a moment alone, sometimes show atmosphere for artists. Artists are very sensitive. We're sensitive people. And show atmospheres are so overstimulating, especially the backstage can be so overstimulating. So it's important for people to take a moment by themselves if they're able to. Be like, I'm gonna step outside, or I'm gonna go to the bathroom and just like close yourself in there and just like take whatever you need to do. But it's so good to just take a moment by yourself beforehand.
I think that's such a wonderful perspective shift on the stage anxiety because you're right. A lot of people feel that, and newer performers, they don't know what to do with that energy. It's overwhelming. It's like you said, the butterflies tingling in your stomach. But channeling that into it's because you care. It's because this performance has meaning to you, and to have that lively energy and use that to perform, I think that's wonderful.
Yes.
Um, yeah, that's really really cool. So you mentioned the people that you work with. Can you tell me a little bit more about that aspect of your life?
Yeah. Well, I'm honored to perform alongside my husband, the beautiful Isaiah Esquire, and we've been together. We we've we met through performance, and we started working together, and became friends, and then fell in love. That was kind of our
Yeah,
arc, and we still work together, and we produce shows together. We love working together, and it's created this really beautiful, very unique partnership. And we've been together for 11 years. Going
oh,
Yes,
congratulations.
thank
Yeah.
you. And throughout that time, we've gotten to tour all over the world, and we've worked with various other troops as well. But mostly, it's he and I. Like we're a team, and it's a really special, really unique experience. I've never had anything like it. There are a lot of experiences that would have been so much harder to do without a partner, both like emotionally and professionally, just to support
Yeah.
each other. So it's been very beautiful, very unique coupling. And we have a beautiful, vibrant community here in Portland. Lots of amazing artists, and Portland has there's definitely drama, right? There's definitely drama, but
Yeah.
we consider ourselves very lucky that we're I don't participate in that. We've had a lucky trajectory in the sense that we haven't had to deal with as much of that. Uh,
Yeah, good for
but
you.
it's like you participate in it. So if you participate in the drama, you can't be surprised when it's all around you, right? And so we just really are very intentional with what we put out there, and we're very intentional with the people that we work with. And for our show Boyerism, for example, we pride ourselves in the curation of that show. Not only is it the top caliber of performance that you will see on Portland stages, but it is also like these are artists that are true professionals and a joy to work with. And that is something
Yeah.
that's very important to us, because you could be incredible on stage, but if you're a nightmare to work with, then that's just it's not we're not going to hire you. And that's something like it's something
Yeah.
that a lot of people need to remember. A lot of artists need to remember is that, like, they it's not just about what you bring to stage, and this is a community. So you can be such a talented, amazing performer on stage, but if you're lacking in the social grace, or the just common human courtesies that you would allow to anyone, how do you treat people?
Mhm.
How do you treat people? How do you treat people that are of service to you, like the support staff, or any stage crew that you're interacting with? How
Yeah.
do you treat those people? Those are the things that I watch out for. And I notice if someone is rude to someone that they think is beneath them, like a
Mhm.
stage kitten, someone
Mhm.
that's there to pick up their costumes or help them set a prop. And if you're rude to that person, it just says so much about you as a person. So like that,
Yeah,
so we
absolutely.
we've witnessed plenty of that, and that's like, so it's so important that we're kind to each other. It's a community, and we have a good community here in Portland. There's a beautiful community in Seattle as well. We've spent a lot of time in Seattle. But that's it's yeah, like you need to keep an eye on behavior like that. And it's definitely something
Yeah.
that can start to run rampant. Is performers get a big ego boost
I know.
from this like energy that they're getting, and it can really change people. We've witnessed plenty of people lose their the softness or the sweetness, or they just get entitled, or they get or they lose themselves to other things like substance. Like it's just
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's just something to be aware of. But we're very blessed. The people that we work with, some of the best, and some of the best on and off the stage. Just very, very beautiful people, and we're very lucky. We're very lucky with the artists that we work with.
Yeah, I think that's super important. Like you said, the character of people, the well-roundedness. Because even if you're an amazing performer on stage, are you a good human being backstage or when you're off there? It matters a lot. People remember how they make you feel,
Yeah,
or how, yeah, that whole thing.
yeah.
And also, just the never feeling like you're above someone. So, for example, like I recently did the Evergreen Flow case
Oh,
with Drew Hearthfire and all of that stuff, and Sam was the production assistant. And at the end of the show, they were like, "Hey, how did everything go for you? I mean, you have such a hard job." And I'm like, "Wait, I think you have the hardest job in the building. I just sit behind a camera. You are on an entirely different level. How did things go for you?" And just kind of like, reframing this of like, we all have difficult jobs. Every job is, important, and it's important to me to value all of these
yeah.
things. No title is above or below anything else.
Yes, and a
So,
good stage manager is vital, and I love
oh, they're worth their
and
weight.
I
Yeah.
will give Samwise their flowers any day. Like they I love working with them at Kindle. I've gotten to work with them twice now. Every time, there's such a
Hmm.
beautiful delight. Really appreciate how they hold all of the performers and in such like a high esteem, and they take their job so seriously. Our
Yeah.
stage manager Zed, Zed Jones, was a fabulous stage manager, and we were so lucky to have them. And bringing them onto the team has made our show so much better, and it's made our life. It's made our
Good.
life so much better, easier, and just like we are so grateful for them. And good, yeah, like a good team is vital. That is so important. We
Hmm.
can't do it alone, and we try. Like we try to do everything. Like it's like, well, we can do that too, and we're involved in every aspect of the production. Like really, really, we are so involved in every aspect of the production. But if you try to do everything yourself, then you will burn yourself out.
Yes, that is a very quick way to burn
Yep.
out, and I've personally been involved in a lot of that over the years, so I understand. Yeah.
Can't be a one horse carriage.
Hmm.
Uh-huh.
So speaking of productions and
Yeah.
shows, can you tell me a little bit more about voyeurism?
Yes. So we that's actually where Isaiah and I met. So Isaiah created Voyeurism 11 years ago, and it started in Portland as it was the very first all male performance showcase. And since then, there's not really a need for that anymore. Like that was a big deal. There wasn't anything like that at the time, and it was important to provide like a beautiful space for male-bodied folk to experiment and celebrate a performance art. Now, flash forward, it's no longer all male. It is all it's incredibly diverse and all inclusive showcase.
Yeah.
Um, but still with that celebration of like gender celebration and diversity, queer artistry. But we met through that show, and then when we got connected, when we got together, then I started supporting with the production. So then now we produce it together, and it's at the Alberta Rose Theater. We recently moved to the Alberta Rose, and we we pride ourselves in really like showcasing not only like diverse spectrum of talent, but also just different genres of artistry as well. Like it's not just a dance show, it's not just a circus show, burlesque show. We really try to bring a lot of variety, and we try to intersect different communities as well. so that that will be reflected in the audience as well. So we'll try to we really
Mm.
try. One thing that we've noticed going to other shows, even like, and there are some beautiful, fabulous shows in town, and we've noticed that some of the audiences can be kind of polarized. So you're catering to a specific demographic, be it if it's a burlesque audience, you're generally catering to a specific demographic. If it's like a circus show, maybe that's a different, slightly different demographic. But we try to really like intersect different communities, and our audience is very diverse, and we bring in folk from all walks of life, and it is a really special joining of different folk,
Yeah.
different communities. So it'll be like, you'll look out into the crowd and you'll see everyone's like having a good time and interacting. You'll be like, wow, like just the different walks of life coming together. It's really special. And that's something that we're really proud of that. And the show kind of garners a lot of, it's kind of like a love cult. We like to kind of lovingly call it that, because people like they'll come and they continue to come back, like they
Hmm.
become a part of that. Like it feels
Yeah.
like a community, and it's very sweet, it's very positive, very like very fun. But what people take away from it is just the amount of acceptance that they feel in the space and the energy.
Hmm.
We've had a lot of feedback. It's just like, yeah, I love coming to your show, and I can wear whatever I want. I don't feel like I'm going to be judged in any way. I can experiment. I can dress up. And that's a really special thing that we want. That's what we want for our audience when they're showing up, to show up as they want to be, and to feel totally safe, and also emboldened, empowered to express themselves. Like that's what I want. That's what I want people to experience.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. I think the intentionality of making it a diverse, set of performances, a true cabaret, so
Hmm.
a bunch of different
Yeah.
things coming together. I think that's
Yeah.
wonderful because there's power in diversity, right? You want to, have exposure to many different things. So aerial arts and circus and burlesque and, singing and dancing, and just you mix all of these things together so you're
Yeah.
not too pigeonholed into one
Right.
area. And then on the community aspect that you're talking about, I always think it's a huge telling sign of both the quality in
Mm.
actual performance and the culture if people keep coming back.
Brilliant.
If the churn rate's really low, that says something because people want to be there, they had a great time, they want to continue to be involved. And that's wonderful because the performances, they become less of a show, which they still are, but it becomes more of a celebration of the people that are represented within that community. I think that's lovely. That's really, really cool that you've put that together and you maintain that as the focus.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. 11 years strong, and it keeps growing. So it's beautiful.
What are some of the, I guess, the challenges that you've experienced 11 years ago with running voyeurism versus some of the challenges today? So I'll tell a story and then I'll ask the question again. Um, I had a comedian who goes on tour through, all over the United States. And this was more about 10 years ago. And they were doing a comedy set. They're from Seattle and they were touring in like the South, like Alabama and Mississippi and all the other stuff
Nice.
there. And they were telling like a bunch of gay jokes and they were landing really hard. I mean, very basic things, nothing
Mhm.
crazy. And then they were telling the exact same jokes in Seattle, and they're like, "So what's the joke?" They just didn't get it because that was such a commonplace cultural occurrence here, and they were just comparing the two cultures between the South and the Pacific Northwest, and just
Interesting.
how the same exact thing is interpreted wildly differently. So I imagine the climate for burlesque and drag performances, it was very different 10 years ago versus it is today.
Right.
Now it's just commonplace. They're like, oh cool, a drag show. Oh cool, awesome. It's very commonplace. Whereas back then it might have been a little bit more provocative or a little bit more counterculture.
It's
So
very
to rephrase the
interesting. Yeah.
question again,
Interesting.
what kind of challenges and cultural things did you notice 10 years ago when putting on the show versus today?
So I'll preface by saying that we've also like toured through some very very conservative parts of the U.S.
Sure.
Not as much in the South, but we've traveled to the middle. so we
Okay.
so
Yeah.
we've done a lot of shows in Idaho, Montana, Utah, up to Alaska, and various other, like, what would be considered in the red. And we've done a lot of that work. We used to travel with a openly like queer. It was marketed as a queer showcase cabaret. And we would travel to these places, and we would put on this very queer show, and it was received well. It was
Good.
received
Yeah.
well. We would often oftentimes the perspective, like the assumption of folks living in the liberal parts of the US, the assumption of how the show was going, they're like, wow, where are you going, like what where are you
Sure.
performing? And they would be like, well, be careful, or like, be safe. And of course we always took care to be safe as we could be. And we had
Hmm.
a handful of scary experiences, which I could talk more about that. But it was what you would expect, but not to the degree that you may think. Like, it was,
Yeah.
I learned to not make any assumptions of the communities that I was traveling to, and I learned to just have an open mind and be like, no, like, there's acceptance and love here. There can be acceptance and love here. The people that are showing up, even if they showed up for the wrong reasons, maybe they showed up to like laugh at the freaks, or like, like, to, maybe they thought it was going to be stupid or whatever. Like, they were leaving
Hmm.
with this beautiful, they had had a
Yeah.
beautiful time. Like, we were having lots of conversations with people who are like, wow, I've never been to a show like this before, like, never interacted with someone like you before. And we were having lots of those conversations with people, and they were like, no, this is so beautiful. Like, it was just like a heart opening experience for people. And
That's
it
amazing.
really, it changed my perspective on going to kind of like small town America, very, like, going to the very conservative areas of America, um, and realizing that there can be a lot of acceptance and love there, and open heartedness. Sure, there's a lot of the other as well, but they seemed to stay away. Like, we didn't interact with as much hatred as I thought. And it was a
Hmm.
very gay show, very openly gay, very queer show, and it was positive. However, some of the some of the, like, biggest uh, homophobic encounters or catcalling or anything have happened here in Portland.
Yeah. Okay.
Honestly, like there's plenty of hatred within the Proud Boys. And if it's not the Proud Boys, it's it's any of the other, like, extremist groups that kind of come into the Portland community. They'll infiltrate the community. So during, like, Portland Pride, for example, like, we've done prides in some very very conservative places, and we've been a part of some of the first Pride celebrations in some of these places, and there's been more just like love and the absence of hatred than in Portland itself. Like, Portland Pride, even, like, it's such a beautiful pride. We love our pride, but it's heavily targeted. And
Sure.
so, like,
Yeah.
it's like people will come in, just to, like, wave their hate
Hmm.
flags, and catcall people on, like spewing out hatred to people.
Sure.
That happens like pretty frequently here in Portland. And I've witnessed it up in Seattle as well. So it's like, here are these, like, mega liberal pockets, that have, like, some real clashing of culture that's happening. So it's something that we have to be mindful of. It's like, oh no, Portland's a very liberal place, very progressive, and there's plenty of that, you know. So that's but for our show specifically. So coming back to the question, for our show specifically, it was never met with that kind of resistance. Like we there was a real need for it, and people were really excited about it. A lot of the like when the show was first starting out, a lot of the male bodied performers were like they were one, you have to kind of push harder. Like you have to, you know, like if you're especially if you're like a queer man doing performance art,
Yeah.
you have to be really exceptional. Like you have to work hard to be very exceptional,
Yeah.
because you don't want to be ridiculed. You don't want to be,
Yeah.
you know, you don't want to go out there and do something bad. You know, be like, you know, mediocre. We'll give the audience even more reason to be like, oh well, that was like they did their best, you know, like, or to be like that was bad. You know, you want to be exceptional.
Yeah.
So there's like maybe a bit more of a drive there, because you're like, well, I have to win them over. I have to like, you know, if you're performing in if you're a queer artist performing in front of a straight room, you have to like you can't there can't be any gaps in your armor.
Yeah. You feel like you have to
You
be
know what I'm
perfect.
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to like really put forth like a strong energy on stage, because you can't be pushed over in any way. So it kind of like it kind of hones a solid craft. Um, and so I think a lot of the other like we would have a lot of like, because it was an all male showcase, we would have a lot of the other ladies that were performers, like either the in the stripping community or the burlesque community. They would come to like support the show, and they were really
Yeah.
excited about it. And they were like, y'all are like making us look bad, and you're lighting a fire under us. Like we need to work harder. And you know, that's not always the case. You know, I would say within the performing arts community, especially the burlesque community, the ladies run the show. Like we I Isaiah and I always talk about how we feel that we are guests within the world of burlesque, as men, like we are guests in that space, and the ladies run the show. And so it's always really special to receive that kind of feedback, to be like, oh no, y'all are encouraging us to level up and to go harder. So it I would say like our show back then, it never we never got criticized in that way, or we were never met with a lot of like bigotry or hatred. But we just were prepared for that. Like we're ready. You know, if someone's like bringing hatred into the space, like we're prepared for that. But we're lucky. We've been lucky enough to have positivity surround us.
Good. Yeah.
And also you get what you give. So it's like if you're putting light out, if you're putting positivity out, you deserve to have it come back to you.
Yeah.
And that's like,
I, th-
yeah,
I
but
think that's great. Going back to your touring through the more, I don't know,
hmm,
conservative or red parts of
yeah,
the country, I think
yeah,
that's one really powerful, and it's really good that you did that.
hmm,
Because having these
yeah,
communities, queer communities, burlesque communities, drag communities, they exist in those areas. They're just repressed. You just don't see them, or they're often not connected. They're not organized, so it's hard to see. And sometimes it takes, I don't know, a rallying force coming through town to really let people know that these things exist. It is okay. It is accessible, and this is what it looks like. And by doing that,
yeah,
you can demonstrate, like, hey, if this is something that speaks to you, there is a path forward, and this is what it could look like. And then you get FaceTime with people. They get to ask their questions and all of the other stuff. And then the other part to that is challenging assumptions, like you said. As a pretty liberal person myself, living in a very liberal city, we have assumptions of, more conservative or red areas of the world. But what I've come to realize is by actually, talking, interacting with these people, we're a lot closer than we may think. I mean, sure, there are the extremists on both sides that get a lot of the media attention, but to the average day, I don't know, Joe or Sally or whatever name you want to put in there, they're just normal people and they're living a normal
Right.
life, and our values are actually pretty similar. We just view things slightly different ways.
Yeah.
So having that relatability and dropping the assumptions, that speaks to me. So I'm really glad that you had those experiences as well.
Yes. It's kind of, it felt like it felt like being like a queer missionary.
Yeah.
like like being like, yes, like here, like come, like let's talk about these things. And it was a lot of emotional labor. Like it definitely, but it does, like I love it. Like I love having conversations with people as long as it's like my boundaries, if I can tell that someone is receptive, like if we're having a conversation as opposed to rhetoric being spewed back and forth. Like I'm not interested in a lecture. I'm not interested in that kind of one-sided conversation in that way.
Yeah.
So as long as someone is receptive and we're having like a real conversation, it doesn't feel like emotional labor for me. It only feels like that if I can just tell that we're not getting anywhere or they're not open to other perspectives. Then I have to have firm boundaries to be like, well, we can't really continue this conversation.
Right. Yeah. Because it's not a
You know,
conversation anymore.
like we're not having a conversation anymore. You're obviously very set in your beliefs, so I we're not going to continue this conversation.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, but it's really beautiful to talk to people and just to acknowledge my own biases as well. Like for sure. Like you were saying, it's like we have to kind of check our bias and understand that like these communities are there's a lot more that meets the eye. And hopefully we can all like take on more of that perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad
So
that spoke to you.
yeah, absolutely. So going back a little bit to like the queer and burlesque things, let's see. I talked to our mutual friend Jane Carter, about like burlesque and what it meant to them to start doing these areas. And when they first got into it, initially it was nerve wracking because one, burlesque, you're taking clothes off on stage. It's a very vulnerable experience for everyone involved. But two, there's a
Yes.
lot of the social stigma going into it of like the quote unquote common person looking in on this activity. What was your
Mhm.
experience like moving into the burlesque community and performing in that capacity? Did you experience any nerves? Did you experience any judgment? What were the feelings involved with all of that?
It's yeah, that's a great question. The act of being seen
Yeah.
is the most important part of burlesque. So like it's not the hardest part isn't getting naked in front of strangers.
Yeah.
That's not the hardest part. The hardest part is being seen. Like really being seen. And if you can master the art of being seen, that's the key. It's
Yeah.
not just about it's not just about having like a comfortability with your body.
Yeah.
And also like I will say that I had a lot of body dysmorphia growing up and struggled with with body dysmorphia, eating
Sure.
disorders, low self-esteem, and insecurity about my body and like what it looked like. And the world of burlesque and being able to celebrate that, it has been really healing in a lot of ways. And I applaud myself for the work, but also like it's a beautiful community and it's getting even more accepting of all bodies. I would say even 10 years ago, folks who identified as fat or bigger bodies,
Yeah.
um, didn't feel the kind of acceptance that they do now in the world of burlesque.
Hmm.
And that is so good. Like it is the way, like it is the right way. But it wasn't that way. It was a lot more polarizing in the bodies that you would see on stage. Like it was like, the rocked out, if you were you had to have a certain type of body to do this art form, and that is not the case. That is not the case, and it's getting more and more accepting of all bodies, as it should be.
Yeah.
And as as my body like continues to shift and change, I'm not so focused on what it looks like anymore. I'm more focused on how I feel, and burlesque has played a big role in that, because when you're a burlesque performer, you get naked in front of people, and you're also photographed.
Yes.
So it's like, so you're seeing your naked body photographed and in video, and that's super confronting for someone who has dysmorphia. And so you're like, wow, okay, wow, my body's changed, or like that's what my body looks like. And it can be really scary, it can be really confronting, and it can also be really very empowering.
Hmm.
And the empowerment comes from the celebration that you feel within yourself, and the excitement that you're feeling from the audience. And like I get just I get elated anytime I have someone give me feedback where it's like I saw myself in you, like I saw my body reflected in your body. Like you have like parts of your body that I'm really insecure about, and I see you on that stage, and it makes me feel like I could do that, or like I don't have to be so insecure. And like
Yeah.
obviously that's such a beautiful thing to hear. Like that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
Trying to empower people, that's the goal. And if I can confront my own insecurities, so like let's say I'm feeling insecure about my tummy, right? Like if my tummy is sticking out a little farther than it usually
Yeah.
does,
Yeah.
if I'm hiding that, or if I'm self-conscious about it, that's like taking me away from my goal of empowering people. So how can I empower somebody else if I myself am not empowered?
I
Right?
see. I see.
So like how can I tell someone to be confident in their body no matter what it looks like, if I am not confident in my body no matter what it looks like? So it's a real exercise in just confronting those insecurities and being seen. Like I go out there, I'm seen, and I remember that, like that's what it's all about, is being seen, and letting people feel inspired, that they don't have to feel so insecure
Yeah.
about something, that they're seeing a body that looks like theirs, that's being really celebrated. Like I've never had the rocked out man's body, and I love my androgynous body. Like I've really come to embrace it and love it. Some things that I was really insecure about, things that I was super insecure about my body, that it was more feminine, that it had more curves in places that most boys don't have curves, and
Hmm.
things that used to be a real insecurity of mine are now the things that I love the most about my body, and the things that I feel the most confident about.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of that's through performance, and through that intentional act of acceptance, and doing it not just for me, but like I want someone to see themselves in me, and to feel empowered when they see that. And
Yeah.
that's like a powerful thing that keeps me from getting insecure.
I mean, that representation that you talked about is super important. Like, for the ability for someone to see themselves in you and say, hey, we have similar body types. Look at what they're doing. They're killing it on stage. And just being able to relate with that. And then, like you said, it gives them the confidence to say,
Yeah,
hey, this is
yeah,
okay. I can perform like that in that capacity with what I have, and it's
yeah.
accepted. Very important.
And even when it comes to sexuality as well, just being very visibly queer, and open about that. And I think that's a statement. I am obviously a white person, but like I it's not my story to tell, but anytime that someone of color sees Isaiah performing on stage, like anytime that they get to see themselves represented on that stage, is so beautiful, and I love to witness those when he gets flowers in that way of just being like, it was so beautiful to see you on that stage, and I saw myself in you.
Yeah.
I think that's like one of the most powerful things, and I love witnessing when that happens. Yeah, representation is so important, and like that is the most beautiful thing about how burlesque continues to get more and more open and expansive, is that it's not just, it is for everybody. It is for everybody, but everybody is not for it. So
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's important. So like the art form is for everybody, but that doesn't mean that everyone can do it.
Right, of course. Yep.
But it is for everyone. There's no criteria of what you have to look like, or what you have to be like.
Mhm. So let's I would love to chat about like self-confidence and the performing arts and
Yeah,
stage
yeah,
presence and all of that stuff.
yes.
How has being a performer changed a lot of your self-confidence, both on and off stage?
Mm, yes, and stage presence is my thing. That's what I love. I teach workshops about it. I coach people about it. That is my thing. And the the basis of that is what I was just talking about, is the confidence to be seen, right? So when you come out onto that stage, you can tell I can tell. Well, and I love watching shows.
Yeah.
I love to watch. I love being in the audience. And I have a very critical eye, of course, but I love to suspend my critical eye and just take in the art. But when I'm watching a performer, I can tell very quickly where they're at in their journey
Mm.
with when it comes to stage presence.
Okay.
I can tell very quickly where they're at, and the biggest tell is if they're moving too fast, or not making eye contact, or showing their face,
Mm.
letting the audience see them, right? You can tell. And a lot of newer performers or greener performers, they 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 move fast, or they keep turning themselves away from the audience. They're not just like standing
Yeah.
and just letting us drink them in, right? And we want to see you. Like we want to like see that we want to see your face. We want to see you. And that's part of that presence. So you can tell when a performer comes out on that stage and they're standing in a certain way, they're letting us see them. You can tell where they're at with their career and their journey when
Mhm.
it comes to stage presence. A lot of flow artists are incredible performers, so incredible. The tricks and the tech and all of the things that they do, amazing. However, when it comes to the actual act of being seen and the
Yeah.
stage presence, the
Yeah.
presence that they have, that's sometimes less important in that art form. So that's kind of the crossover. That's the intersection is okay. You're amazing at your craft. You're incredible at the tech and the tricks, but the audience, you're wondering why the audience isn't connecting to you. You'd be like, I don't understand. Like when you come out, when you come out on the stage, you barely do anything at all. You don't do any hard tricks, but the audience is like loving your performance. I come out there and
Yeah.
I'm doing all these amazing tricks. It doesn't seem like the audience is like getting it, or they're not connecting. It's like there's a reason.
Yeah.
There is a reason. And that's something I love to work with artists on. That is okay, let's talk about this. Like let's talk about the stage presence. Let's talk about how can you connect with your audience. Like how can you make them feel seen? How can you make sure that they are comfortable and sitting back, and all of these things comes from a mastery of stage presence.
Yeah.
And a huge part of that is just the comfortable being seen. And yeah, that is like the number one. And if you're not comfortable being seen on stage, it's very likely that you carry that into your life. And when I teach like a stage presence workshop, we always talk about things that run deeper than just the stage. And you don't have to be an artist to practice stage presence.
Yeah.
Being a speaker, if you speak at your job, or if you need to give a presentation, if you're being interviewed, or even just walking down the street, you are performing, right? Like, it's all a performance right now as we sit here having this conversation with the camera. Like, it's a
Yeah.
performance. And so, and it's good, and it's good to present yourself. And a lot of people lack the confidence and the inner, like the inner resolve and confidence to perform, and to really just stand and deliver. So
Mhm.
that's something you can, it's a skill.
Yeah.
It's a skill that you can learn, and that you can hone, and that you can work on. And it applies to so many different areas in your life. And it'll only, it honestly, like, being a strong performer. A lot of people have a somewhat, they're like, well, what do you mean I'm performing all the time? And I've had a lot of people kind of have a negative reaction to that, be like, doesn't that seem inauthentic, or doesn't that seem like faking it? And that's like, the honest answer is, there's very few times that we are just honestly, authentically ourselves.
Yeah.
And when you are authentically yourself, you notice,
Mhm.
and you really notice that, and that's very beautiful. And when you're able to be yourself on stage, that's a really special experience. But there, we are performing all the time, but that doesn't mean that we're being inauthentic. It doesn't mean that we're not being ourselves.
Mhm.
Like, that's what I believe, at least. Like, you can still be yourself, while bringing forth this confidence, like drawing. It's not like you're not faking it. Like, if you're not a confident person, and be like, well, just fake it till you make it,
Right.
like, act like you're, like, pretend
Yeah.
that you're confident for the next 5 minutes.
Mhm.
Be like, I'm so nervous to give this speech. Like, I don't think I can do this. Be like, just pretend that you're confident, and you're not pretending. You are, like, you have access to that. It's
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
It's you did it. You went out there, you gave the speech, you acted like you were confident. You did the thing.
Mhm.
You were confident. You weren't faking it.
I always thought when people say, oh, you're not acting like yourself, you're being inauthentic, I always thought that was such an interesting take because, at least for me, like my energy levels and how I carry myself throughout the day and what parts of myself I choose to show at any given time, like that's me. So, like, I'm not going to be, going at 100% every moment of the day. My energy goes up and
Mhm.
down.
It's
So,
exhausting.
at the low points of the day, that's still me. So when I'm performing, I just happen to be at a high point and I'm putting on a show, but that's just one facet of my being. I'm not being inauthentic. I'm just showcasing a different part of me. But yeah, um, speaking on the confidence and stage presence thing, I would love to share this with you. So,
Yes.
watching your Kindle 2024 performance, there was a very clear moment for me to where you did this eye flick. You looked down and then you looked up at the crowd and then you like popped the button on, I think, like one of the capes or the garbs that you had. And I looked at that. I was like, God damn, I felt that. I was like 150 feet from you, but I felt it. And just the presence that you command with that was so powerful. And I noticed a lot of the things
Fun.
that you do back from my, band and color guard days. You have your chest out, you have your chin up, you smile so the person 200 feet that way can see that you're smiling. You're uh, not actually burning a hole through someone, but you're staring with such intensity that they
Mm.
can feel it
Yeah.
all the way over there. And I notice all of the things that you do in your performance. There's a lot of techniques and practice and skills that I can
Right.
tell that you've accumulated over the years. And it's wonderful and it shows.
Oh, that's beautiful feedback. And yes, I love that space. Like, the Kindle stage is great, and that amphitheater is huge. And so, like,
Hmm.
I love when the audience is so far away, and you really have to, you have to emote so far. And the makeup really helps a lot with that.
Yeah.
And there's so much theory involved in that. But the big reason why I've incorporated so much makeup, because it is drag makeup.
Yep.
It's a lot. It's a lot of makeup, and
Yeah.
the choices, and I've learned a lot over the years, um, in how to paint your face to project an expression 200 feet away.
Yeah.
That is a beautiful thing, and can't be achieved without the makeup. Like
Mm.
the makeup is so important, and being being able to, it's one thing to use your face, but it's an enhancement. Like the makeup enhances that. So to be able to see an expression from so far away takes a skill of putting on the makeup in a certain way, and
Yeah.
that's another skill set. It's all involved. It's all involved. But that is so fun to hear. I love hearing like what people take away from a performance, and sometimes, yeah, like it's not always the big like impressive things. Sometimes it's the really nuance. It's the little moments.
Yeah.
It's a perfect example. And I'm the same way when I'm taking in a show. I can be so impressed with someone's skill and artistry, but there'll be a small moment, like maybe it's like a face that they made, or one choice or even just like how they walked out on stage, like
Mm.
whatever it's sometimes it's the small little nuance details. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that was my favorite part of the whole piece. You're like, I didn't even notice that. I'd be like, no, 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 that was my favorite part. For sure. For sure.
No, it's so funny the things that people pick up, because you're right. For you and the thing that I just mentioned, it was quite literally just an eye flick and you snapped a button. It
Yes.
wasn't the
Yes.
fans, it wasn't the,
Yeah.
parading around stage. It's so funny.
That's a moment. I love that. I love that. Yeah.
Speaking of strutting on stage, one of the things, like you were saying, for confidence, just it's very telling, where someone is in their performing journey by the composure and how relaxed they are that they when they're on stage. Like you said, from a simple walk, not too fast, not too slow, not juddery or stiff. They're relaxed as if they were walking across their living room to go get something, but obvious with
Yeah.
more bravado and show. And it just shows
Mhm.
how measured these things are, and how many minutes or hours they've spent being on stage to where that's now comfortable for them, and it's just something that they do. So yeah, they're definitely telling signs of um, how much experience people have on stage, their comfort
Yeah.
level, and other stuff like that. It shows.
Yeah. And some of those things are inherent. Some of them are inherent, and some of them are learned.
Mm.
And I think it is a very important thing to be a student. I think it's important to always stay teachable. Right? So I love when someone brings new information into my life, and when someone shows me a new way to do something or new skill to do. It's very inspiring to me, and so I try to, because I have been a teacher for such a long time, that I try to stay teachable myself, so that I don't become unmoving in my craft.
Yeah.
So it is important to learn and to study. And I always tell people, like, take classes, take workshops, take a one-on-one, like get in the studio and have like a one-on-one session, um, because it's so important. And some of these things are learned and taught, but there is a quality there's a quality that is just yours, and that can't be taught. So it's important to remember that, like, you are your own artist, you are your own person. You can't be taught that. You have something special
Hmm.
that no one else can teach you how to do what you do.
Yeah.
But you can learn a whole bunch of other things to add to your craft.
Mhm.
But there's something intrinsic that's just yours, and that's really special.
Yeah, I think it's super important to be, teachable, like you said, and to be a forever student. I found that, at least for me, one of the best ways to learn something is to also teach, or at least to solidify information that I have. So
For sure.
yesterday, I was teaching a dear friend of mine like basics of cameras and videography, because that's a space that they were wanting to move into. So as I was
Yes.
explaining these concepts, I know all of these concepts like the back of my hand, but I didn't do the best job explaining these things. And I realized like there's a little bit of a gap that I need to overcome, and how to make and how to communicate a little bit more effectively in these areas. So it kind of
Mm.
touches base with you of saying like be humble, be teachable, and at least for me, like I know the knowledge, but now the gap for me is how to convey the knowledge more effectively. So it
Oh
just
yeah.
kind of opened up a different area that I need to get better at, and it exposed some areas of me like, hey, I could do this a little bit better. And there's more than just knowing the knowledge. There's all of the ancillary skills that surround it.
hmm And it'll continue having the feedback from your student, or anytime that you teach something, it's so good to get feedback. And yeah, like I noticed that I have a workshop that's called Holding Space,
Mm.
and it's my favorite workshop to do. It's all about stage presence,
Okay.
I've done it many times, and it continue. I have a structure and a flow to it, and certain exercises that I always do,
Yeah.
but it's always a little different. It's always a little different because it really depends on how people are interpreting the information. And I have to stay malleable. Like
Yeah.
I can't be too rigid with it, because then I'm blocking someone's experience. Like they might not be needing that right now. So I have to stay fluid and malleable so that I can adapt.
Yes.
And I'm always learning. How to convey the information in a different way, depending on the participants that are in the workshop. It's so important. And people have different ways of intaking information, especially with something like technology. So
Oh, yes.
when you're teaching people technology, when you're teaching them about cameras, like you have to like meet them where they're at, because everyone's at a different place, and it's like, okay, well, what do you know, or like what do you know so far, or how do you, okay, got it. And then you can start to put together the lesson plan. But it's a hard thing to teach. Definitely a hard thing to teach. And some of the things that I'm trying to teach people are very big and esoteric, and kind of, I don't know. Um, I don't know what the right word is, but sometimes people, like, I'll feel them resisting, because it's like, this is ridiculous. Like, what are we doing? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's kind of one of those, like, if you've been to an acting class,
Yeah, I
if
know
you've
what
ever
you mean. There are
you've ever
barriers
taken
in
an
place.
acting class, you're like, I don't like, what do you mean be a toaster? Like, there's like certain things that you'll do in an improv or an acting class. You're
Yeah.
like, this is ridiculous. But it's like you're trusting the process while also being like, I feel ridiculous right now.
Yeah.
So
It's
it's
like
like,
kind of have to embrace the silliness, right?
like, all right, here we go. Trust the process. But yeah, I love it. Love
One of the things that
it.
I've learned as being a teacher is not everyone learns the same way, so you have to present the same
Mhm.
information multiple different ways. And the example
Uh-huh.
I always give is like from The Emperor's New Groove, to where they were talking about like Cusco's poison. They're like, the poison meant for Cusco. Cusco's poison. This is the poison we will use to give to Cusco. And they'll just keep, like say this like
I,
7 different ways so it really sticks. It sounds silly, but it's incredibly effective.
I love that movie. I love that movie, and that's great. Yeah, that is a perfect example.
So, a closing tradition that we have on the show
Yes.
is the previous guest leaves a question for the current guest, not knowing who the current guest may be.
Oh,
Yeah, fun, right? So, the
fun.
question that is left for you is, what was the most impactful moment of your performance career so far?
I think I know which one. This is a hard one. There's been many moments. But the one that's like popping out to me first, there was one experience that I had. It was performing. It was headlining at a burlesque festival. Big, beautiful stage, and beautiful opportunity. And like at the, when you're headlining, you're at the very end of the night, and it had been like a 3-hour show, very long show, and big show, and the energy. And I was performing an act that was very personal to me, and something happened with the sound. there was a technical malfunction that happened. So I came out, and there was so much energy driving me into this performance. I was very raw, and I was very open because it was a performance that meant a lot to me. And I went out, and I could tell that, like, and there had been some issues in during the show with the sound. Like, we had been aware that there was something wrong with the soundboard, and went out, and the music started. It's like the sound started making that like crazy feedback,
Ah, yes.
like harsh, like really really harsh, and people were like cowering. Like, it was terrible. It was like, and it kept happening. It kept happening, and I had to like stop the performance. Like, I like stopped. I was like, pop, like,
Yeah,
stop.
yeah.
Stop the music. And it was, and it was like in this packed house, like, thousands of people, and it was like packed in there, and everyone, it was just like silent. And I didn't have a microphone either, so I just had to like project my voice. I was like, obviously something's going wrong with the sound. Hopefully they'll be able to fix it. I'm not able to continue right now. I'm gonna go, but like, hopefully they'll be able to fix this. I'd love to restart the act. Hopefully we'll figure out what's going on. So I like went backstage, and just like felt like so. The emotion was just like, I felt so defeated, and like,
Yeah.
it was so, I just felt like so like crushed. I was like, I really just felt crushed, and was just like vulnerable and embarrassed, and all of these emotions were coming up, and I was losing it. I was like losing, I was breaking down. I was just breaking down. And Isaiah was there with me, and he was holding me, and I was crying, and just like feeling just very like broken down. And they weren't able to fix the music. Like, the soundboard was done. Like, it was,
Okay.
I don't know what happened. It was just done.
Sure.
Like, there was no, it was done. So they weren't able to fix it, and there was no sound. And I just like made the decision. They're like, what do you want to do? And I said, I was like, I'm just going to go out there, and I'm just going to do it in silence. I'm just going to like do this in silence. And I just went out. Like, I went back out there, and it was one of those moments where it was like, I could have just been like, I'm just not going to do it. And I would have left feeling so defeated and broken down.
Yeah.
I was like, no, like, I was like, I don't want that feeling. I don't want to have that feeling. So I like made the decision. I was like, I'm just going to go out there. I'm just going to do it in silence.
Yeah.
And I didn't do the performance that I had planned. I just went out there, and I just like moved and danced in silence. And it went really well, and I felt it felt beautiful and amazing. And that's been, like, it was like standing ovation, and left, like, everyone left there with a beautiful feeling because what a disjointed way to end such an amazing show. Like, everyone would have left being like, well, that was awkward,
Yeah. Yeah.
like that, like, but instead, like, I was able to do it. I felt good about it. All the audience was able to leave with this feeling of like closure. And that was a really impactful moment for me
Yeah.
as an artist. And it was beautiful. It's maybe one of my best performances I've ever done. And it was just a silence moment. And that was like very impactful moment for me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. There's so much contained within that story because there's the confidence in knowing that you had to stop the show, right? Like that takes confidence to say, "Hey, we're going to move off script. I'm actually going to put this over here." Like that's scary, right? It's easy to just
Very
kind of go
scary.
along with it, but I'm glad that you
Yeah.
had the confidence to stop
Very
it,
scary.
and I'm also glad that you had the confidence to go back out because I try to live my life with the path of least regrets. So I'm very familiar with that feeling that you described of if you didn't go on stage, you would be left with that hole. But there's also the
Yeah.
community aspect too. It sounds like the
Mm.
people attending that show, you were surrounded by a wonderful community who one understands
Yeah.
technical difficulties, but was incredibly
Oh, yeah.
supportive of your performance in
Yeah.
silence. And,
Yeah.
they made you feel welcome and proud to be on that stage and empowered and all of that. It's a beautiful story. Thank you for
Yes.
sharing.
Yes. Oh, of course. Of course. Yeah. I love that.
Where can people find you and where would you like to direct people's attention to?
Oh, good question. I have my um, Instagram is always a great platform if people want to connect. Johnny.Nuriel on Instagram. I also have a website, www.johnnynuriel.com, and that has all the information about my coaching services. So
Ooh.
if you're interested in being coached as an artist, or if you want to talk about life coaching, is also something that I provide. So that's my coaching business. So please reach out. Also come to Boyerism. If you live in the Pacific Northwest, I highly recommend making a trip to Portland to visit us at the Alberta Rose Theater for Boyerism. Yes.
That sounds lovely. I will put all of the links in the description box down below, make it very easy for people to find you. But
Yay.
Johnny, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I've learned quite a bit, both about performing arts and a craft as a craft, and about you.
Well,
So this has been wonderful. I really appreciate you being here. Thank
oh,
you.
I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for initiating this, and you really like create a very comfortable space to talk. I'm really grateful. Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Well, until next time. Cheers.
Bye.